So we might as well get started. So thanks, Connected North class, for joining in for the final session of Earth Day. We've had an amazing Earth Day that started with the sounds of the earth that Mother Earth makes, the natural sounds, the sounds made by man, and sounds of nature, and it was absolutely astounding to listen to all those incredible sounds. And then we listened to some music, and we made some recycled art, and we learned about keeping plastics out of the oceans. And so to kind of go full circle on Earth Day, we're coming back to what's called we call this the heartbeat of the earth. My friend Waukomaun Pawis is an amazing drummer and storyteller, and we really want to welcome him to round out our Earth Day to tell us some stories about Mother Earth, and then also to be sharing some beautiful drumming. And we know that this is just going to be the perfect end to your day. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Walk. What we're going to do is, I guess you're going to go through your presentation, but we won't stop for questions. We usually have a break for questions, but you can see the chat. So if you see something come up that you want to address, Lee's here. Lee.
That's awesome. Hi, Lee.
He's awesome. Like our Lee is here. So we'll type in the chat that you'll see the chat, but usually we take questions part way, and the students are really great at that. So everyone just kick back and enjoy and celebrate Earth Day as we learn about the heartbeat of the earth.
Miigwech Mali, Bojo, Waukomaun Indígena Cause, Wasaksing Nindonjaba, Gigo Nido Dem, Tekaranto and Dao. What I said to you, and what I like to always start off with, is introducing myself in my language, which is Ojibwe. So I said Bojo, which is a formal greeting of hello. We also say Ani. And then I mentioned that my name is Waukomaun. You guys can call me Walk. All my friends call me Walk. And that means, it means a carving knife, or actually Walk means like a bend, and it's a bent knife. So a long time ago, my ancestors used to use carving knives and make some wonderful stuff. And it's actually a recent hobby of mine, getting involved in that. And and then I mentioned that that I am from Wasaksing First Nation. So it's a community just a couple hours north of Toronto, on the eastern shores of Georgian Bay. It's an island. It's a beautiful place. I miss it very much, and I look forward to going back there whenever I can. And I'm also from the Fish clan. So where I come from, we have clan systems that belong to families. And so my family and my lineage, we're a Fish clan. And I currently reside in Toronto. So that's where I'm joining you guys today from. And I'm really excited, and I'm really happy to have been invited today to join in the Connected North at Home space to share about some of my gifts and some of my skills that I possess. And my gifts are drumming and storytelling, and there's something that I really love doing and love sharing. So I'm really happy and welcome all of you to the space. I brought my drum with me. You can see one in the background. I brought some props that I can talk a little bit about. But the way that I like to start off is I like to start off with an opening song. And so in this opening song, I'm not super fluent in the language. I don't know it that well, but I'm a student of the language, and I like to just offer this song as kind of an intro and welcoming us all into this space. So I'll sing that song for you now. Bakira, bindige, Neshenagibada, Bakida, Bindigangoma, Weneshime, Hera Hero. Oh, miigwech. Just gonna take a quick drink here. All right. So I always like to start off with an opening song, as I mentioned. That in that song, the words that I sang loosely translate out to "Stop what you're doing and come and check this out." And we're inviting the spirit of our gathering to take place. And in that spirit, I'm inviting all of us to come together in a space of learning, in a space of to let go and have a good, fun time. So throughout today's presentation, normally when I do this, I'll invite students that I work with to participate. If you have some type of drum at home, perhaps you can drum along with me. You know, I find people like to clap along as well, or tap on their knee. So I invite you to do that. As I talk about the importance of the drum today, and I'm going to talk about stories, and I'm going to kind of break up the presentation with some songs, with some stories. Hopefully I can give you guys some demonstration. If I can tilt up my camera properly and you guys can see me, I'll do a little bit of a dance step for you guys so you can learn a little bit about my culture, and I can share that with you. I also like to start off by acknowledging my ancestors and my knowledge keepers for passing this knowledge on to me. In my community, drumming and some of our cultural practices were lost due to colonization and residential schools and other things of that nature. And because of some of my knowledge keepers, they left the community and they brought that knowledge back. A lot of the knowledge had to go either into hiding or underground. And we were able to persevere and preserve our culture, our language, and our identity because of these amazing people. And I was one of the first youth in my community when I was really young, when I was in kindergarten, and I got to sit at a dewagun like this one here. And I'll talk a bit about that in a story a little bit later on. And so I just want to acknowledge them and say chimigwech, a big thank you to them for passing that knowledge on and being hungry for revitalizing the language. Another thing that I like to share is that the knowledge that I carry and that I pass on is just the knowledge that have been passed on to me. And so our communities are diverse across Turtle Island. We might have drumming all around the world, and that's a beautiful thing. Drumming is found in all parts of the world. And so even the communities that are within my area, we might carry the same knowledge, but it might be slightly different. And so I acknowledge that we all have our own little bit of differences in the way that the stories are passed on and the way that we understand them. And so I'm just here to share the knowledge as I understand it. And I'm always interested in hearing other cultures, other First Nation communities and how they do things. Because I've seen drums that look exactly like this one, a hand drum, but there's something different about it. They might have another piece of rawhide that goes across the front, and it kind of makes like this like snare drum type of sound where it goes after you hit it. It's really cool. But yeah, I'm gonna get into another song, and then I'll start talking about some stories, talking about the importance of our connection to Mother Earth and the gifts that she gives us, and the lessons that she gives us, and the plants and the animals, and how we all live in relationship with one another, and why it's important for us to reflect on our connection to the land and how we can get involved in that connection to that land. Okay? Take another drink here, try to read the comments, and yeah, just thank you again for participating and being here and joining me. I love to share my culture and my identity. I love to pass on this knowledge because I think it allows me to really appreciate my own culture and my own identity. And I feel like as you learn, you kind of, once you learn, you start sharing, and then you realize what you know and what you don't know, and then it makes you want to learn more because you want to be better at what you do. And so by being able to share with all of you, it helps me with my own confidence in the knowledge that I carry. It helps me be proud of who I am and where I come from. And Mally, just because I kind of need glasses, my glasses broke. So if you see any questions that pop up whenever I kind of finish a song and take a drink, that might be a great time to just kind of mention a comment or even ask a question for me.
Okay, so Lee says applause, and that this is making her cry because she misses her grandparents, and both of them love music very much and passed down many songs they love to their grandchildren. So, you know, it really shows that grandparents make those great connections.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today, Lee. Appreciate you coming in. It's awesome that you're here. It's really special to me. And yeah, just to kind of build off of what you were mentioning there, Lee, in your comment, like the stories, the teachings that I carry within, I feel like within many cultures around the world, all this stuff is passed down. The difference is in some cultures, in Anishinaabe culture, a lot of our stories were passed down through oral tradition. We didn't write things down. There are certain cases where we did write things down, but a lot of our knowledge was passed on through these stories, through song, through generations, coming together through gatherings, social gatherings, or through ceremony, and it's just a really beautiful thing, because I think what I really appreciate about it is all these stories that we carry. They all have, you know, just in general storytelling, there's always a moral to the story, right? And so within our stories, they teach us about our history. They teach us about how we should live in relationship with the land, and how we should treat each other with kindness and respect and love, and show our humility. Where I come from, we have what we call the 7 grandfather teachings, and those are just some examples of those. And those are kind of like life lessons or core values that we carry and how we interact with one another. And so, yeah, a lot of that, I'll kind of get into it. I'll touch a little bit on those today. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is I wanted to share a story, and I'm going to kind of branch it out over kind of a longer distance of time here. And I'll get into that in just a quick second. One of the things that I like to share as well is just like teaching about the music that goes on behind there, behind like drumming, for example. So when I did that first drum song, actually the second one as well, we did what we call a straight beat. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just continues on in that nature. And we have other drum beats that sound a little bit different. I'm going to play it. I play in 2 different styles, and I want to see in the chat here if you guys can guess what that sound is trying to emulate, or what it's trying to sound like. Okay, so I'm going to play it one way that I like to play it, and then I'll play it probably more to the way it actually kind of the clue would sound like to you. Okay. So if anyone has any guesses, you can put it in the chat. Okay. Now I'm going to play it a different way that might sound a little bit more what it's supposed to sound like, or what it sounds closer, or what the idea of I'm trying to get behind it is. All right. I see someone says time, march, like a marching time. A heartbeat is one of the guesses. Yeah, and so if we were to put our hand here on over our heartbeat is boom, 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 boom. That was, I think that was Lee that guessed that. Good job, Lee. Exactly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a story, and I'm going to get to that, to why it's the heartbeat and why it's so important. So this is kind of just that little teaser preamble into the larger story that's going to kind of go throughout. Now I'm gonna sing a song that kind of uses one of those styles of that drum beat, just so you can hear the difference. And so it's a bit trickier to follow along, but yeah, just try it out. And what we did when I was a kid, we used to just drum on the very edge of our drum because it wouldn't make that big of a noise. Like I used to sit at a larger drum like that, and there'd be like 10 of us gathered around the drum. On a hand drum, I can talk a little bit about the differences later on, but it's just usually one person drumming on a hand drum. Oh, miigwech. Miigwech. When I say miigwech, that's thank you in Ojibwe. So I'm just thanking you for participating and being present here with me and allowing me to share my gifts with you.
So Lee says that she plays music all day. I completely understand that. And her cat ignores it. And as soon as you started singing, her cat came over and stared at the computer. So that song touched the heart of a cat.
Right on. Oh goodness, that's awesome. Yeah, and there's just something about it, and obviously it's probably the rhythm of the music, and just thank you to your cat, Lee, for that love and that appreciation.
Gregory also said that he's Cree and he's familiar with your teachings and he applies the 7 grandfather teachings to his life daily. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and for me, it's just about a way of carrying yourself and treating people with kindness and respect, and that goes a long way. When I was growing up, we'd have functions at our community center, and people would come together and there'd be a luncheon, for example. I would stay afterwards and I would always during the luncheon, I would make sure that to help serve the elders, make sure they had food. I would always ask if they needed help when I was there. And then afterwards, I would even stay and help clean up, even though that wasn't a function that I was, overseeing and originally part of. It's just, thinking of our community members and how we can support one another. And I think that a lot of that I owe to sitting at the big drum. So when I was really young, like I mentioned, when I was in kindergarten, one of my native language teacher, she was my aunt Clara. She would invite my knowledge keeper, John Rice, into the school, and once a month we would do drumming. And so it taught me a lot about leadership, about supporting everyone in the drum group, because I remember when we were young and we would start drumming and doing our leads. So there's parts of a song. We would do a lead at the very beginning. It's probably reversed for you guys. A lead, and then we would do kind of the main body of the music where everyone would sing together, and then it would do another lead, and then everyone would sing together, and you do that 4 times in total. So there's 4 leads. And so it was always a big honor to do a lead, but it was always really hard because you're nervous, you don't want to mess up. And I found that when you did mess up, everyone in the group would kind of chuckle or laugh at you, and you kind of feel like, oh no, I messed up. But I learned that when other people tried as well, I kind of chuckled too, and I know how they feel. But we created a safe space for us, and I know as a leader at the drum group, I would just sing even if I messed up. I found that I learned quicker when I made those mistakes. I said, this is what I did wrong. Next time I'll sing it this way. And when I noticed other people singing at the drum, and if everyone's kind of had that little chuckle, you can't help it in that learning space. You're with your friends, you're with your peers, and that's hard when your peers are judging you sometimes. But what we do is when someone would try, we always gave them a thumbs up. Even if we were kind of laughing at them, we gave them a thumbs up, and that just meant like, that was a good effort. I loved it. Keep it up. Let's do it again. Next time it comes around to your turn to sing, do it again, even if you mess up. And so we created this space of supporting each other. And I feel like that was one of the teachings that I gained from sitting at the drum was that, and leadership, and understanding how to take care of, we call this our Mishomis, our grandfather. So the men would call the drum Mishomis, or grandfather. The women, they call them their Nokomis, or grandmother. It's the same thing. It's just the way as a man how I acknowledge the drum. So I'm going to move into a story real quick here, and I'm going to try to break it up and come back to it. And if you have any comments or questions, please let me know. The reason why I kind of like to break it up is because it can be hard to sing constantly, and it can be a bit boring to just kind of hear a story full out sometimes. So I kind of like to mix it up a bit for all of you.
And I missed a comment there that Gibbler said that, and you just brought that up, that what you're doing right now reminds him of when some First Nations teachers visited his, and he's in Mississauga.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Yeah, and yeah, so in this story, the way that I understand it is, there's probably, depending on the community you come from, you might say it started, and this is where it started in my community. But the way I understand it is, a long time ago, there was a war between two nations, two First Nation communities. And so a long time ago, our wars actually weren't about killing. They were kind of like this glorified game of tag, where you had kind of like a stick like this, and you have to sneak up on your enemy, and you'd have to tap them without them knowing you were there, and then it'd be like, okay, I'm it, and I go home. And it was kind of like the last person standing would win for your community. And so an example why we might need to go to war is because there's certain territories that communities have, and maybe you need to go into that territory for hunting. Maybe your community has grown in population, or they need to move from a certain area because there's a lack of resources. Maybe something didn't grow that particular year, or someone's migrating, right? And so that's what used to happen, because we honored life so much that's what we wanted to do. But they say in this story that I'm going to share with you is that something happened. And typically in my community, in Anishinaabe culture, we might have our clan systems and we might have our chiefs, but the people that we really needed to go seek permission from were our women. Women in our communities, we hold them up and value them very greatly. We hold them up in a high regard. And so we sought out their advice and guidance on what the steps we needed to do. And in this case, the community needed to go into this new territory to gain this new territory for hunting. And then afterwards, the woman said, yeah, okay, yeah, you can do that. But something happened in this war where someone got hurt, or it became violent. And so people were hurting each other, maybe taking each other's lives. And something happened inside the men that were going to war. They started to enjoy hurting other people. They started boasting and bragging about how they hurt other people. And that's not something that we should be proud of harming another life, and describing the ways that we have done that. And that also translated onto, like, if you start acting a certain way, when those men would come back home to their community, then they would start thinking that they're all high and mighty, and they're treating other people within their own community disrespectfully and maybe hurting them as well. And so it was really poisonous, I guess, to the community that this happened to. And so they say that in this story, a little girl was born. And when she got old enough to kind of speak, she said, hey, where are those men going? So this war must have been going on for a long time if she was born during this time, and by the time she was able to speak. But the women said, oh, they're going off to war. And so when she asked, well, what's war? And they described it to her, she was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we be going to hurt other people? That's not very nice. And so she decided, as she got a little bit older, that she wanted to do something about it. And they say that she wanted to go on what we call a fast. Another term you might have heard is a vision quest. But basically what happens is an individual goes out into, we always say into the bush, by themselves. You build a lodge or a wigwam, and you sit in this wigwam and you kind of meditate or you pray. You can sing, you can sing with we have shakers, we have drums. We offer our sama, one of our sacred medicines, and we pray and we meditate on whatever it is the knowledge we're trying to seek. And they say that sometimes like a vision will come to us. And so in this story, they say that the young girl went out there and she was out there for the full cycle of the moon. So when you see like the full moon and it goes through all its different phases and it's a full moon again, that's almost a month long. It's about 28 days that phase of that moon goes through its different phases. And so they say she was out there that long without food or water, so she hadn't eaten anything or drinking anything. And they say her body was so frail and so weak that her spirit was about to leave her body and go into the spirit world, and she was about to pass away. And then she saw something kind of out of there's like a little, like a hole in like a doorway in the wigwam. And the wigwam is just this dome-shaped building. So she looked out and she saw something. It was like a cloudy day. When you have a cloudy day and the clouds kind of part a little bit and the sun rays come down. So she saw the sun rays kind of come down, and something gave her the strength to get up. And so she got up and she noticed something coming from the sky world. It lowered down. And then as she had this renewed energy, she put like a shawl or a blanket over herself and she walked outside. And as she got closer to it, something told her inside that thing shouldn't touch the ground. So she threw her blanket on the ground. And that disc-shaped object was this thing right here. It was a drum, Dewa gun. And I have a blanket underneath here just to kind of reference that blanket that she had. It doesn't touch the ground. It actually floats. So it's suspended here by these wood pillars. And so that's a representation of that story. I'm going to come back to that story in a minute, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up. But I thought I would sing another song. We can wrap up the story, and then I want to talk a little bit about I'm going to go with a story within a story in a minute too. And I'm going to talk about the importance of our connection to the land and importance to our Mother Earth, and kind of tie in our Earth Day for all of you and all the lessons that you might have been learning about today. Let's see here. Yeah! Miigwech. Okay, so we'll wrap up the story, and again, I'm going to get into that story within a story. So we left off where that little girl was on her fast, and we saw this. She saw this Dewegan lower from the sky world, and she put her blanket underneath. And they say in the story that these beings came to her. There might have been some for her. They might have been her grandmothers, and in this story, I would refer to them as my grandfathers. They were spirits. They were coming to tell her about the importance of this drum and what it is. And so, in that earlier that and when I was talking to you guys about that drum beat, something like that, or it's that story of that heartbeat. And in the language, in my language, a heart is ode, ode. And we have other things that kind of reference that, like a strawberry, for example. We call that the heartberry, ode min. The min part is what makes it a berry, ode min. And ode wegun is the sound of what this is called, ode wegun, ode wegun. And I'm not super fluent in the language, as I mentioned, or how it breaks down, but the ode, heart, and then we gun is like almost to make it sound or to play like a sound like the heart. So that's kind of like roughly how it sounds, or the translation is, if you break down the word parts. So it's the sound of the heart. And yes?
Oh, sorry. Because I know you're, Lee wants to know about like the construction of the drum, if you can include that. We can't hear you.
Oh, I got muted. I was just saying that I'm about to get into that part, Lee. It's a great question, and that's the next part of that thing. So it's a great segue question for me. And so that's what this is. And so in this story, those beings were telling this young girl that the men that were at war, this is what they were missing. They were missing that connection that we have to our mother's heartbeat. Before we come into the lodge of life, our mothers carry us, in our belly for 9 months, and every day we hear her heartbeat, and we're reminded of those gifts that women naturally carry. So the gifts of like kindness and love, unconditional love, all these different these traits that women would carry. Like within my community, we say that men have certain gifts and skills and have set jobs and stuff like that, and women as well. But it's important for us to know each other. So there's balance, there's duality within that, but then knowing each other's roles and skills and responsibilities as well. So it's not like as a man, I have man tasks or jobs, but it's important for me to understand and know the women's roles and tasks and jobs so that I can do that as well. I can talk a little bit more about that in later on, but so the men essentially were missing this connection, and when our mothers are pregnant and they eat the food, they nourish us. There's just that she carries us every day and loves us unconditionally. And so that's what the men were missing. We're missing that connection to life and to be reminded of our mother's heartbeat and her skills and her natural gifts. And so they taught her about what this is made out of. So I usually ask people what this is made out of. I'll just hold it up, and you guys can kind of quickly like maybe put in the comments what you think this might be made out of. So I got the Dewe gun. I got my matig, my stick as well. That might be a clue of what it might be made out of. And yeah, so I'm going to just kind of quickly look. The skin is, what is it made out of? Cool. Yeah, leather is a thing. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and it's really cool when I get to do work with kids in different communities. For example, if I'm connecting to youth up in Nunavut, they're like, it's seal skin. And that's really cool to hear that, because that's what they would make their traditional drum perhaps out of. But I think we use the kind of the materials that are found around us, and the one answer was leather. And so the one is made out of leather, and the other one is made out of a tree. So the way I understand it is there's teachings behind this. So the tree represents truth because it grows straight up to the Creator. And so the men needed to understand truth and their role within nature and how things work. But the really important one that I think is the skin, and this comes from deer. So we can make it with moose, we can make it with deer, depending on where you come from. Although this one's probably moose because it's thicker and it can withstand more, whereas this one doesn't get hit so much or as hard. So the deer, and this is where I go on my little side story that I like to go on. But the deer represents the kindest of all animals. So they say when a hunter would go out into the bush and hunt and need to provide food for their family, they would take some sama, one of our 4 sacred medicines, and they would put that sama down on the ground, maybe in the water, maybe next to a tree, but they would kind of meditate or pray, and they would acknowledge, they would show their humility. One of our 7 grandfather teachings, they would say that without Mother Nature, without Mother Earth and all of her gifts, what gifts does she give us? She gives us water. Water is so important, and that nourishes us, that helps other things grow. Without water, there wouldn't be life on Earth. The plants and the trees, they provide us with food, medicine, shelter. We can actually observe how things grow and learn about them. We learn about science and math and all of those sort of things through that. The animals that come in creation as well, they provide us with food, medicine, tools, clothing, for things for our shelters, all of that sort of thing. So without all of Mother Earth and her gifts, we wouldn't be able to survive in this creation. Because, I don't have physical claws to dig a burrow, or to like attack a predator, or to harvest. Like, I'm not like a giraffe. I can't reach up on the tree and grab the acorns that might exist up there, right? So, we have to rely on other things within creation, and we need to be respectful of all of things in creation, and live in relationship with it, and to sustain it, and not take things more than we need it. We need to be stewards of the land and show that respect and that responsibility to the land. And so they say when that hunter would show that kindness, that compassion, and that humility, they put their sama down, a deer would actually walk out of the bush and lay down in front of the hunter and sacrifice itself, give itself up so that hunter could provide for their family. And that's that deer's role in creation, is to understand that it's also sustenance for other beings in creation. It's food for other beings in creation. So that's why we say the deer is the kindest of all animals, and that's why men needed that connection to that kindness. And so they say after they gave those beings, those spirits that were teaching that little girl, they taught her 64 songs. 32 were for men, 32 were for women, and she took that back and learned about how to create the drum, how to create the sticks, brought that back to her community. She had a renewed energy. She brought that back to the community, took away the men's weapons, gave them drumsticks, sat them down around the drum, and then had the women stand around the men and make sure that they sat there and that they connected with that heartbeat. And they learned those songs, they learned those teachings. And when they say that they grasped that fully, she took that drum and took it over to that other community that they were initially at war with, took away their weapons, sat them down around that drum, taught them about those stories and those songs. And then they say that those two communities were at peace with one another after that. And this drum right here, they call it the Big Peace Drum. And so that's that story that exists within that. I know we probably only have a few more minutes, so I think we can go to some questions. I might think of some other things that I want to share, and maybe if there's questions about anything that I share with you today. Oh, I forgot to mention that I brought some rawhide. This is usually what the drum is made out of. It's soaked in water. This is just there's fur usually on one side, and then there's a little bit of flesh on the other side, and then you scrape away the flesh, and then you take away the fur. and then you just kind of like let it dry and it becomes rawhide. And there's other processes to make it softer. So if I wanted to make moccasins, or this is like really soft leather right here. And then obviously here's another style of drumstick. This is one that I use on a larger big drum like this one back here. Yeah.
So does any that was amazing as always. Like you are an amazing storyteller, and we just love the way that you Lee now wants to hear the big drum.
Okay. Yeah, it's might be a bit tight. You can do different things. Use different styles of sticks. Like you can either heat it up or put some water on it. We like to feast our drums, throughout the year. When I say feast, we'll usually make some food and we'll feast the spirit of the drum. We recognize that this drum, as I said, it's my Mishomis, or my grandfather, so it has a spirit. When we make the drum, we actually blow energy and our breath into, like, there's a little hole right here. We'll blow energy into there. That's like giving it its life. And so we recognize that as it has its own spirit.
And Lindley said that she made a hand drum before, and they used buffalo rawhide. So that's cool.
Cool.
You live in Manitoba, right, Lindley? And
Cool.
there's buffalo there?
Yeah, that's so vital to the communities out in the prairies, the buffalo. And they would have used obviously what's available to you to make their style of drums out in the west, out in the prairies. It's just really cool to find the commonalities that exist between communities all across Turtle Island. I'm sort of southern or in central Ontario kind of area. But I've seen people up in that I've met from Northwest Territories. They'll have a hand drum just like this. They'll have a stick that looks like this, but they play it like that. And so we could use our drums for kind of like social gatherings and having things like that. We have drums that are used in ceremonies. We might have drums that are played for entertainment. And I feel like when you go up to Northwest Territories or the Yukon, they'll have things like hand games, and they'll play with the drum, and that kind of accompanies that kind of game and that tradition that goes on up there. So it's really cool to see the unique ways that it's done and used. And then even as I've been up to Nunavut and learned from the people up there about their drums and the way that it's made, it's just really fascinating to learn. And I love learning and sharing the knowledge.
Awesome. So I don't see any more questions, but everybody loved this.
Yeah, and you know what, Mally? So there's some things that I like to do that are kind of like more participatory, and I would be happy to come back and share more, maybe some dance steps, do some little competitions. I know I won't be able to see the people on the other end, but there's some things that will get us moving, that I'd be more than happy to come back and share, and just maybe even more songs. Like, you could do more song-based learning. But there's like competitions. There's like the one we call the shake up, so we can get people active and moving. And then there's another song called the duck and dive, where you as the drum hits harder, you kind of duck, so it kind of gets people moving. So something people can do in the home.
And you know what? It absolutely is possible to see the kids. We were playing around with that today, and we had little windows we had some participants turning on their cameras, and so that it was really great to be able to see the students. They were building something out of recycled materials. So we can do that. Like, absolutely, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So thanks, Rock, for taking time out of your day. And I know that you've got a little one running around, and you really wanted to be there with us.
Yeah.
But and Gabby said she'd like that, and thanks so much. So Gabby will arrange that in the next couple of weeks then.
Yeah.
Because we have a dance class coming up, on a hip hop dance class with Waukomaun's soon-to-be sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're going to do a hip hop dance class with Dana on Friday, which is going to be really awesome. So we'll get that. I'd like to do the drumming one. That would be really fun. So we'll see you guys tomorrow we have Egypt and a medieval man, and we have an incredible author. And thank you for doing so much for us with us on Earth Day. We loved it, and thanks so much, Walk. We'll see you soon.
Miigwech, pamapigwamen, everyone.
Bye bye, guys.